All right, good morning and welcome to the Sports Buffet on Elegbete TV Radio. My name is Daffy Matthew. So we're going to have Joseph Okiche with me in the building. Joseph, good morning.
It's great to be here. This is the day we've been waiting.
Yeah, it is the day we've been waiting for. My church folks will say this is the day that the Lord have made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. And my music folks will say you need the highest bars on this to be able to pour down your rhymes on it. And that's exactly what the rap singers will say. But then we're not rap singers, we're not in the church. We are sports commentators and sports analysts and sports reporters. That's what we do. We like to talk about football. I love the beautiful game. There is a reason why it is called the beautiful game. And some time ago, I was in New York, and someone said that, what is football? What is sports without the commentators? As much as you love to see the dribbles, as much as you love to see the dazzling runs, and as much as you love to see that acrobatic, really greater kind of saves or flamboyance of Jorge Campos and the mighty giant size of Peter Schmeichel and the fancy hairstyle of David James or Tony Adams, David Seaman, there is the class, the guard, the craft, the beauty, the education, and the sensation that commentators bring. And commentators are like the real example of fine wine. Footballers at most 15, 20 years, that's like the ones that really took care of themselves. They are out of the stage and somebody comes in. And even in that 20 years, you can't find them being very, very consistent and on top of their game. But then if you find a commentator that has been there for 1 decade, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you know that this is stuff of the gods, not human anymore. The guest that I have on my show today is not just a football commentator. He's been a footballer, very brief. He's also a coach. He's part of a different team, but nobody gets a front row seat in football's main event like this guest that I've got on my show. As a matter of fact, every time I talk to him, and I just get tears in my eyes because I'm asking myself, what did I do right to get the favor of being friends with such a legend? It's the iconic, the legendary. If you remember when Man City won the league title with the last kick of the game, that voice you hear every day when I start my show in the morning, Aguero! I don't know how to say it, but that is the man that I'm talking about. He's been in the game longer than I've been on the face of this earth. But the funny thing, he's taught me a lesson in humility. I mean, if you all grew up like me playing the FIFA computer game, then that was the voice we were always hearing in FIFA. If you follow the FIFA World Cup, you follow the Premier League, you follow the UEFA Champions League, like I am addicted to it, then you must have heard that voice a million times over. And every time it comes on the microphone, it's just like you're hearing it for the very first time. It made us all fall in love with football. It's not just the game that we fell in love with. We fell in love with this man because of how, his enunciation, his pronunciation, his calm, his ease, and then the explosion when he needed to, the calculation, the minute-by-minute game calling is excellent. I could go on and on. I could spend 2 hours talking about this man, and I'm not even just started. When he moves, actually, the planet moves. He's the God. Yes, the stars align every time. He is the God of the business that I do. And I feel very, very honored. I feel like I am Achilles and he's Zeus, okay? But I could say more. Without further ado, I make welcome the Zeus of football commentary world over, Martin Tyler. Martin Tyler, good morning and welcome to the Sports Buffet.
I'm still blushing at all the nice things you said about me. I don't deserve such applause from you, but thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to see you again and talk to you again. We share the love of football. That's why we're friends, and we have many, many friends around the world because we're all bound together by this love of the beautiful game.
Yeah, my wife keep accusing me that the only problem she's got with me is the fact that she knows in her heart of heart, even though I'm not going to admit it, that I love football more than I love her and our 3 children. Even though I don't come out to admit it, and if she watches this video, she's going to finally confirm it. But it seems like I do. It seems like I do love football more than anything else in the world. But then let's hit the ground running. Last time we talked, we had an interview like this. During the heat of the COVID, it was all about you, your experience, and we used it as training materials for a lot of people. The guy sitting across the table on the other microphone with me watched that and learned a whole lot. Now, we're going to do, because of the time that we have, we're going to do a review of the season that's gone by and a preview of the Euros that is starting this weekend. But before then, let's talk about you. Have you been holding on? Like, I mean, we're still at the tail end of the COVID is still here. And sometimes at the very end of any crisis is the most dangerous time. Have you been holding on?
Well, one advantage of being one of the older people on the planet is you get in this country the vaccinations quicker. So something that's happened since we last spoke. I've had 2 vaccinations against COVID, and we believe in this country that is a way forward. Obviously, only time will tell, but it didn't. Everybody thought long and hard about it, I think, because this was rushed into because of necessity, you know. And the decision for every individual is a personal decision. Like most people, I thought, oh, I'm not sure, it's very soon. But once I went to the vaccination center and got reassured, and I had the 2 jabs now, and I didn't have any after effects from any of them. So going around the place, I feel protected, but of course they still feel you can carry it. So we have to be very careful. We're still observing a fair bit of lockdown, social distancing, wearing masks in public places. But the privilege that we've all had as football broadcasters is we've been allowed to travel up and down the country. Much to my surprise, when it restarted in June at the back end of last season in the Premier League, I thought we would be commentating, maybe even from this device I'm talking to you now in my own home, you know, because some broadcasts were doing that right at the beginning. Wow. To the studio, but we were allowed to go to the grounds by the Premier League and by the our employers, of course. My employer, Sky Sports, and that is just an amazing privilege to go up and down, drive up and down the motorways in the country where there were signs saying you must not travel, knowing that I was allowed to travel because of football. And it was, yes, different in the grounds. It has been different, although the crowds are coming back in towards the end of the season, and we're going to have crowds for the Euro, which is great. But that winter through the dark months and the dark times was made a bit lighter for my colleagues and myself, because we could go to the games. And when you think maybe 300 or 400 people at the most, with counting the security and the teams and all the ancillary stuff around the actual clubs, you know, to be in a stadium that only had that number of people in on a regular basis was a joy. And I felt very, very lucky, and I know I speak for all the commentators, that we feel exactly the same, that we were given a little bit of a window of opportunity, if you like, when others weren't. So to answer your question, it's a long answer, and give you a short answer to your question. I'm feeling fine and raring to go, and looking back on the Premier League will be fun, and looking ahead to the Euro as well will be fun, because it's almost upon us now.
Yes, it is. So let's take it straight off. One of the biggest constellation that hits me immediately came from Aston Villa and Liverpool this season that just ended. The previous season, 2019-2020 season, Aston Villa survived relegation by heads breadth. Okay, and we came into this season, and Aston Villa and West Ham became one of the surprise teams of the season. And at the same time, Liverpool, in the previous 3 seasons, starting back from 2017 and 2018 and then 2019 and 2020, were an unstoppable machine, a well-oiled German machine put together by the German coach Jurgen Klopp. But last season, the whole thing went from a solid structure to a house of cards. How did you see? You had front row seats seeing all of these things unfold. First, let's start with Aston Villa. What did Aston Villa do right? No big signing, no major money spending after the previous season, but then they were able to hold it all together, get results in places they never get results. What did you see that Aston Villa did differently that they can continue in the next season?
Well, there were some signings. Ollie Watkins, who's just been unfortunately cut from the England squad, but went from being a signing, playing a first Premier League season, into playing for England and scoring on his debut, actually, in the last round of international matches. So there was improvement in the playing staff, but I think the feeling when you have a narrow escape like that, it goes 2 ways. One, you really fear the next season. The other way, the Villa way, is it's not going to happen again. And you're right to mention West Ham, who done even better than Aston Villa, but they're in the same pocket really, because they just stayed up. In fact, there was a game between West Ham and Aston Villa right at the end of last season, in which everybody was a bag of nerves, you know, and both clubs survived. So they both grasped the nettle, as we say, and decided that this can't happen again. And they've gone out and attacked the season, and they've had a huge amount of satisfaction with it. The Liverpool end of it, obviously injuries will be the main analysis of it, and losing. So we didn't lose much then. Those are part and parcel of the way the game is. But the truth is, you have to try and adjust. But when you're hit so much in a certain area of the pitch in your team selection, I think that undermined the confidence and the way that Klopp liked to play his football. Whoever played at the back was not Virgil van Dijk or Joe Gomez, however much they tried and however well they played individually. The whole shape of the team was affected by the fact that they didn't have that base, that strong, absolutely rock solid base that those two players had provided. And once you start to lose a little bit of confidence in football, it's a very strange commodity, isn't it? That I still cannot believe now, as I'm saying it to you, and Liverpool fans in your viewers and listeners won't still believe it, I don't think, but they lost 6 home games in a row in the Premier League. I mean, I don't think that's ever happened to a defending champion. And they couldn't score. The great three amigos up front couldn't score, or didn't score enough, and the whole thing did fall apart very easily. So great credit to Liverpool, though, the way they were, having bottomed out, really, they came back up again with a flourish at the end and got themselves what was absolutely vital, that the season wasn't a complete wreck, because they are in the Champions League next season.
Right. So talking about being in the Champions League, that brings about my next thoughts of thinking. Leicester City stayed in the top 4 more than any other team that ended up in the top 4 the course of the season. They had the best run on the top 4. At some point, some people said that they were going to challenge for the title again. This was 2016 all over. They went on to win the FA Cup. How did that team, put together by Brendan Rodgers, manage to lose the top 4 slots? Being the holders of the top 4, the gatekeepers of the top 4, the longest of all the teams, how did they manage to lose it?
Well, I think part of the reason was that it happened the year before as well. I think there's a psychological aspect to it in that respect. I would give them a huge amount of credit for winning the FA Cup.
Me too.
They had never won the FA Cup before. It was something of an albatross. They'd lost 4 finals a long time ago, all in my lifetime, incidentally, but a long time ago, in one in the 40s and 3 in the 1960s. So that was an amazing achievement for them. And whether it had any impact on the way they played in the last couple of games, because simply psychologically it's very hard to go again. And they were playing another cup final in the Premier League to try and get the points. And they were so close. I mean, there were periods on that last day when they were in the top 4. We have these as it stands tables as the games go on. And they have come from, pretty not humble origins, but they're not regarded in historical terms as a real fighter for European football, So what they have done since that fairy tale win of the Premier League in 2016, they have not just made that a fluke, a one-off. They have built something solid and substantial. And they're now a very, very well-run club. Obviously, more galvanized still by tragic circumstances, as well as the achievements that they've managed on the field, but they are very much going in the right direction. And yes, they have been in the Champions League. It's not as though it was the first time that they lost. They were there obviously as champions in the 16-17 season. And I'm pretty sure if they can hold it all together, and there is no reason to suspect this structure will crack just because of what happened on the last day of the season. They're run really well. They are a credit to the game. And of course, they were the highest placed team who did not flirt with the European Super League, which was obviously a stain on the last few weeks of the season and the clubs around them. And it's no disgrace to say that the same 4 clubs finished above them as finished above them last season. They did the season before, if we're going to call this season last season, you know what I mean. So 2 seasons running, the same 4 clubs have finished in the top 4, and Leicester finished 5th. So they are there or thereabouts, and I wouldn't have any negative thoughts. Of course, there's a big difference financially between the Europa League and the Champions League, but they are going places. And I think anyone who champions the underdog, the less than super clubs, would champion Leicester City.
Yeah, someone said that they are the best of the rest. And I haven't said that we're still going to look into Leicester for the Nigerian interest. We last season we saw the resurgence, or I wouldn't use the word resurgence because it's really not hit high notes. He had a very good goal per minute ratio with Manchester City, and then came to Leicester, really wasn't getting the vibe. And then all of a sudden, Kelechi Iheanacho became a star man, scoring game after game, week after week, like that. And then there is
day after day, because he scored on every day of the week.
Every single day of the week, the only player to do that. And his brother in defensive midfield, Wilfred and Ndidi, was also, a rock solid player. Martin, how would you rate these 2 Nigerians in the Leicester team? I mean, no disrespect to Vardy and the rest of the players that I'm mentioning, just the 2 of them, but for my Nigerian audience and the Nigerian interest, we're going into the Nations Cup pretty soon, World Cup qualifiers and all that. How would you rate Wilfred and Ndidi as a defensive midfielder and the new found energy of Kelechi Iheanacho?
Well, Wilfred first. I think any other team would sign him. That's the best compliment that I can pay him. Any of the 4 teams above Leicester would sign him. He's that effective at what he does. His stats are superb. He does it without upsetting referees too much. He gets the ball strongly and fairly. And that's where everything starts from. You've got to have the ball to win the game. And he's a great retriever of possession. And he's a footballer as well. He's not just a tackler. So I think he is absolutely top draw. Absolutely top draw. And Kelechi, like anyone who scores goals, it becomes a marketable commodity, It was interesting that Jamie Vardy didn't score when Kelechi hit his hottest streak.
Yeah.
It was almost as if the way they play, it only can suit one of them at one time, and how that develops, I think Brendan Rodgers will want that not to be the case, because he doesn't want a Jamie Vardy who's in a supporting role. He wants Jamie Vardy to be hungry, and most of all, Jamie Vardy wants Jamie Vardy to be hungry.
Absolutely.
Age will not dim his appetite for scoring goals, But Kelechi, the last time I saw Leicester play in the flesh, it was the league game at Chelsea, and he didn't start, and they're in trouble, and he comes on and scores a goal within moments of coming on. So he's got that knack, and he's hungry for goals, and that's a great quality.
All right, that's a great one. Now let's look at Manchester United. Since Jose Mourinho left Manchester United, we've seen the former Manchester United players, which globally we call the class of 92. One of the complaints from LVG to Jose was the fact that they've lost the Manchester United DNA. Okay, now they brought in somebody who's got the Manchester United DNA in him, and he stayed in 2nd position for the last 2 seasons, lost that in the Europa Cup finals, then, make it to the FA Cup finals as well. Is Manchester United making progress, or they are stuck in traffic?
I think one of the whole issues about what we debate is what fans think their own team should do. So let's say there are 6 teams that think their team should win the league, maybe more.
Yeah.
Tottenham have won the league twice, in 1951 and 1961. That's a long time ago, and yet they're criticised for not making challenges for the league. Arsenal haven't won the league since they moved from Highbury, and that's getting on for 20 years ago now. No, not quite that, but 15 years or so ago. They haven't won the league, and yet they were winning the league before that. So are they feeling that they should win the league? Only one can win the league.
True.
So I think you have to put it, it's a relative feeling, and no one should be entitled to win the league. You have to earn it. Everybody in football knows that. There's no feeling within the game that people, just because we are a big club, that we should win the league. To win it is it is the hardest league to win, absolutely the hardest league to win, because of the quality of the teams and the investment of the clubs in getting really, really brilliant players to entertain us every week. Yes, they've made progress, I believe, but how you evaluate that progress is down to the Manchester United fans. I'm not a Manchester United fan. I'm an objective broadcaster. I think they have made progress, and I think some Manchester United fans will think they've not made enough progress. And they have gone from third to second in the league. They have got to a major European final. Whatever you say it is, to get across the line, to get the silverware, and that's what it seems that they're lacking a little bit. But they'll be in contention next season. I'm sure they're looking, even while we're talking, there might be transfer negotiations going on to strengthen the squad. So I just say not everyone can win. Only one can win, and there's no doubt that Manchester City deserved to win the Premier League this season.
All right, so still at Manchester United, how pivotal was the signing of Edison Cavani? Because they brought in Ojo Igalo, and then all of a sudden, he was scoring goals in the cup competitions, but then wasn't playing in the league. And all of a sudden, Cavani showed up, and then they let Ojo go. How important was that signing? And then going into next season, we know we're going to have the Euros now. We don't know what Mino Raiola will come up to do with his Pogba's distraction. But I know that Bruno Fernandes wants to play for a very long time at Manchester United like Cristiano Ronaldo. How important is the signing for last season of Cavani? And then going forward into the next season, how important would it be for Manchester United to keep Cavani, Bruno Fernandes, and Paul Pogba?
Well, I'd rather talk. I don't really like talking about transfer speculation, because I don't deal in that. I get a team sheet an hour and a half before the kickoff. And I deal with the players who are playing, not the ones who might be coming in. But on Cavani, I just wish, I would love to spend an hour with him going through how he learnt to do what he does. He's an absolute master of movement in the penalty area, and it's something that you try to coach. I was a striker when I was playing a long time ago, and I just wish I'd known the Cavani style then, because it's just incredible. There is a saying in football which I really believe in, which is you have to find the ball. If you wait for the ball to find you'll be waiting a long time. Go and find the ball, and he does. And his movement in the penalty area is absolutely outstandingly good. I don't think any of us in the UK realised how good it was until we saw him week in, week out playing. And there was obviously a lot of talk that he wouldn't stay for next season, but he's made such an impact, and it's great for the quality of the Premier League as well as for Manchester United that he is staying. He can't go on forever, obviously, but I think the way he looks after himself and what he does is short and sharp, and hopefully that'll stay with him for a few more years, because he's a master at what he does. He's superb.
Let's move to the champions of the EPL. Anybody who knows me knows that I love Pep Guardiola so much. I also get very angry with him. I still think that I still haven't forgiven him for his selection on the Champions League finals, even though that I don't consider that as an excuse, because the same Chelsea had beaten him twice, even with two defensive midfielders. So that really don't count in the scheme of things. Pep Guardiola, won the Premier League season. I'm not one of those people who believe that he didn't play strikers, because I think Gabriel Jesus played about 28 games in the season. Aguero played about 17. Your man, your guy, and I saw the notes that you gave to him as a farewell note. I think he's going to pass that on to his great grandchildren. It's going to hang on the wall forever. And I was saying to myself, I wish Martin Tyler had give me a note, a match note like that, but I didn't play up to the level. Manchester City, what they did last season, and the funny thing is, last season was not as incredible as 2 seasons before. But can Pep Guardiola sustain a system of play like he did last season?
It was a remarkable title win. I think it'll go down. People look at it and say, "Oh, Manchester City, they romped it." Really, they didn't. Of course, they had a very ordinary start to the season. Right up until November time, they were middle of the table. They looked brittle. They looked vulnerable. They looked as though maybe some of the players had been there a bit too long, and that Pep was maybe losing a bit of interest himself and thinking of the next move in his wonderful managerial career. But they got together, the coaches got together, and quite separately, the players got together and had a meeting. Fernandinho was a loud voice in this, saying, "Look, we've dropped our standards. We can't do that anymore. We've got to get together." And strangely, the run started just at the back end of last year, but the game that really emphasized that they were now back on track was at Chelsea, where they played a first half that, a masterclass really, and scored 3, could have scored more, tore Chelsea apart. And it's quite ironic that the next 3 meetings that they had with Chelsea, they lost them all in the space of 6 weeks or something like that, and that you would never have thought then. But that, of course, Chelsea had changed their manager in that period. But no, Pep got his mojo back. The players got his mojo back, and they were unstoppable from then on. The run of victories was extraordinary, and it was a surprise when it came to an end because they dominated so much. But they are human beings; they're not robots. And when you've nearly done the job, sometimes you just ease up a little bit subconsciously. And I think perhaps that caught up with them. As for the Champions League final, it was one of the most wonderful games, I thought. Wonderful. I'm not a great lover of the 2 teams from the same country playing in that elite competition. It's obviously not always been England teams, but we've had the Spain teams and Italian teams in the past as well. So I think it takes a little bit away from the global nature of it. I thought that until the game was played. The game was just worthy of the biggest stage. It was a brilliant match.
Yes,
Everybody was at full tilt, a really brilliant game. And Chelsea shaded it through a couple of marvelous pieces of defending and a moment that gets you the headlines from a player who probably hadn't made too many headlines in the course of the season. But the big names come alive in the big games. That's one of the great cliches of broadcasting, really.
Yeah.
And certainly Kai Havertz, who came for a big fee, deserved to have a moment he's in the history books forever. But Manchester City's league season, exceptional, and not to be underestimated where they came from earlier in the season to where they finished. It was a huge leap by hugely talented and hugely motivated players.
Now let's center on my favorite club, the club for whom I have an FA Cup medal to keep here, even though I didn't play in the 71 FA Cup, but I have the Arsenal FA Cup medal given to my dad back in the day. Arsenal have gone from Wenger out. They don't want Wenger because he's derailing the club, to, top 4 is not important, is a poor man's ambition, and to playing in Europa consistently, got to the finals with Unai Emery, and losing to Chelsea was seen as a disgrace. And then Arteta came in, won the FA Cup, and then last season we saw it petered out. Arsenal is not going to be playing in European competition for the very first time in 25 years. That's like the whole time that I spent following football. What can Arsenal do? Because if we'll talk about the problem, everybody knows the problem. What can Arsenal do? Some people think Arsenal is not spending money, but then I checked. Arsenal spent more money than Leicester in the last 5 seasons, spent more money than West Ham in the last 5 seasons, spent more money than Aston Villa. A lot of the clubs that are riding above them right now, Arsenal spent more money than them in the last 5 seasons. And instead of going forward, Arsenal is actually regressing. What can be done? What is wrong with Arsenal in the first place, and what can be done to fix the problem? Whoa, just when I needed him to talk about my favorite club, Arsenal, I lost Martin Tyler, but I think it's going to come back. It's going to join us again, and we're going to be able to answer that Arsenal question. It's a very, very big question that is hanging, and we'll talk about it. But then, Joseph, let me come back to that question I was going to ask you. What do you think of Martin? When you hear the name Martin Tyler, what comes to your mind? Okay, he's back. I don't think you're ever going to answer that question. Yeah. Okay, so where did we lose you, sir?
Are we talking about Arsenal, are we? I lost you in the middle of the question.
Okay, so I was asking.
Yes.
Yeah, Arsenal spent a lot of money than Leicester, West Ham, Aston Villa, even Tottenham Hotspur, who went on record as going 2 transfer windows without making a single transaction. Where can Arsenal get it right? What do they need to do to get it right? And what is actually really wrong with Arsenal? Because if somebody's saying it's because of spending, Arsenal is spending more money than the clubs that are above them, and they're still not making progress. And if you talk about, okay, they have a very big stadium, they have the structure and everything, they have a club owner who's got 6 other franchises and built the most expensive stadium in the world in LA, 5.5 billion. So money is not a problem. Why is Arsenal romancing with relegation more than the top position?
Yeah, it was relegation at Christmas, wasn't it? Before that Boxing Day game against Chelsea. I think 14 points from 14 games or something like that. It was really poor. It's a difficult question because you're right. Money has been spent, but the perception is that they won't be given much money to reinforce the squad. And I think what's happened, they stockpiled players under other managers and ended up, the most important thing for Mikel Arteta was to get players out before he started to reinvent the squad and reinvent the ambition that you feel and Arsenal fans feel. He's done that to some extent now. I think the departures, it was very important. The January transfer window worked well in that respect for Arsenal. The Ozil situation was finally solved and other players left as well. So I think now you've got to trust in the manager and see whether he can galvanize a group to be more competitive. When they were good, Arsenal, they were very good actually, but they weren't good often enough. But I go back to what I said to you earlier. Only one team can win the league, and because in your time, Arsenal have had a very successful period. You're still thinking it should be like the early Arsene Wenger years, and it just doesn't work like that. And thank goodness it doesn't work like that, because what we want is competition and rivalry and the challenges and the excitement. Already, you and I are feeling the same. We're feeling excited about the next Premier League season, only a few days after the last one's finished, because of the potential in the market and what's going to happen in the European Championship to point managers in the direction of players that maybe come from less familiar backgrounds. And so that's what keeps it stirring. That's why I keep loving doing it. And thank goodness at the moment I'm still able to do it. So it is that, what will tomorrow bring, and what goes around comes around in the end, probably.
I'm going to take bits and bits now from the league. Leeds United, Marcelo Bielsa, they call him the godfather of Pep Guardiola. They say that he's a different kind of coach. Okay, someone wrote an article and said the only coach that he can compare him with was the former coach at Oz, Goiros. Okay, so what's your impression of Leeds United and Marcelo Bielsa? And one of the things that amazes me is it doesn't matter who Leeds United are playing against, they go all out attacking. Kind of remind me of the Wenger way. Play the Arsenal way, it doesn't matter, we can't sit back and defend. What's your impression of Marcelo Bielsa and Leeds United?
If you ask me for a list of things of what I remember of this particular season, in order, I put Leeds United, if not top, very near the top, because commentating has been an absolute joy. They're brilliant to watch. You're spot on when you say they treat every game the same way. They try to win it. They risk losing it the way they play. So they had the odd really big defeat, and then they have big wins against teams that they shouldn't have big wins against. And they never stop. Their energy levels are amazing. we had sort of researched Bielsa when he came over and thinking, well, his teams have a bit of burnout at the end of seasons, it seems. Been no burnout for Leeds. You remember the first season he was in charge, they didn't make it through to the Premier League. And that was like, oh, Bielsa burnout. But goodness me, right to the very end of the campaign, Calvin Phillips dislocated his shoulder in the last seconds of the last game with a Euro place at his because it actually just made a mistake and he wanted to make up for it, even though the game was won. His mistake that cost the goal but not the match, and that's just the way he's put Bielsa's put this this power, this belief into players who hadn't played in the Premier League. Very few of them had ever played in the Premier League before. Luke Ayling, I don't know how much you know your Arsenal history, but was in an Arsenal Youth Cup winning team.
I remember.
And was deemed not good enough to play for the Gunners in the first team. And he played nearly 400 games in the lower leagues before he finally got into the Premier League, because he was in a Leeds team that got promoted. And he's been outstanding. He typifies the attitude and the spirit of it. So, now the next challenge is to do it again, because those energy. The Leeds players probably need the summer off more than most, but and some of them will, because they're not international footballers. But Calvin Phillips is, and he may well be in England's midfield. He's been playing in the warm-up games.
Oh. Now, one shocker when the season started was how Everton was able to get a coach that is deemed above their ranks, Carlo Ancelotti. And just the kind of surprise that we got with his arrival, and all of a sudden Everton was flirting with top position, ranking high. James Rodriguez had found his mojo once again. Cavani was doing his thing. Richarlison was doing his thing as well. And then all of a sudden the season ended. We went to sleep. Carlo Ancelotti was still the coach of Everton. By the time we woke up the next morning, it was a Madrid coach. Summarize Everton for me. I mean, I'm still at a loss how that happened. We still have a contract with Everton. There was no rumor. Everybody was talking about Carlo Ancelotti or Allegri going to Real Madrid. And we went to sleep with Carlo Ancelotti in blue. We woke up, it was a white angel.
Well, Carlo Ancelotti, I'm sure, went to Everton because he was very well paid. The owner, Farhad Mashiri, has money and he has dreams as well, which I think is a wonderful thing. He's romantic about football and about his club, and that fits in well with the British side of the ownership as well. And they have been a very big club, Everton. Remember that. So there was obviously a hope that Ancelotti would maybe in the short term, not the medium term, in the short term, fire something up specially for them. And there were periods in the season, particularly away from home, when they were excellent. It was only on the last day of the season that they missed out on a European place themselves. So, but he also had in his contract, I believe, a clause that said if a club of the stature of Real Madrid came in for him, he could go. And he invoked that clause, and therefore he was out of the door as quickly as he could get to Madrid. And he's got history there. I can understand why. He's a lovely guy, Carlo, really engaging person, very laid back, certainly in outward appearances. Loves to talk football over a cup of a nice cappuccino, Italian cappuccino. He's a great person to spend some time with, and I'm disappointed that I won't be spending any time with him in the Premier League anymore, because he will be a loss to the league. And now Everton, but they will aim high. I'm sure they will aim high, unless, of course, they follow Carlo's advice, which I believe is to give it to Duncan Ferguson, who's been an assistant coach under several managers now, but showed in an interim period that he might be a man to actually manage the team. He was a fearsome player, Duncan. If you remember him as the kind of centre forward that we would all like to have been, and I'm sure he's got the personality to hold the dressing room together at that level.
I played as a winger, and I used to say that Duncan Ferguson, Alan Shearer, are the kind of center forward I want on my team, because all I needed to do was just lump the ball up. I don't have a problem. Just lump the ball up. I don't see any defenders around them that can stop them. So I really know Duncan Ferguson. I can't forget 1995 in a hurry. Come on, like it's etched in my head, and I can't forget the brawl, the fight. That's what really makes. If you played football, you know that's what makes football. Sometimes I think that football has gone very soft. It's not as feisty as it used to be. And yes, a lot more technical now, a lot more analytical and all that. But I used to love the brawl. I love Roy Keane, Patrick Vieira. I love Duncan Ferguson against anybody. I love the Kung Fu kick of Eric Cantona. Yeah, people can say whatever they want to say, but I mean, this is coming from my side of it. I love all of that. But I mean, it's a long time now. It seems like that never even existed. But then we can't do review of the Premier League without talking about two key characters. First, Nuno Espirito Santos and Wolverhampton Wanderers turned the Premiership into a Portuguese harness. There were more Portuguese players playing for Wolves than any other nationals. And I was expecting the performance of the previous season, and there's this player that normally bathes with engine oil, or is it crude oil, or massaging oil, I don't know, Adama Traore. And the season didn't go as planned. He had to pay with his job. What's your summary of Wolverhampton Wanderers?
Well, like Liverpool, they suffered an injury to a really important player, Raul Jimenez, who they were not big hitters in terms of goal scoring, but Jimenez had made the difference on a good number of occasions and got the Wolves to their top half finishes that they had. But prior to that, there was obviously a move to change from Nuno to change the way of playing. You could go to Wolves as a commentator and you knew what the tactical formation would be: 3 at the back, maybe 4 in midfield, 3 up front, or 5 in midfield, 2 up front. He tinkered with that a little bit. But in the end, they went to a back 4. I was there the first night they played in the back 4. There was a collective intake of breath. There was no crowd, but all the staff were going, we've never played with a back 4. So he wanted to change the philosophy of the team to try and maybe get more goals, but it didn't work. And I think the season, it was one of those seasons for a lot of clubs, really, where in the end, because of the difficulties with COVID, and if you haven't got anything to really fight for, they were never going to get relegated. You just want the season to come to a close, start again. But he hasn't been given the opportunity to start again, as you say, given the link with the Portugal football scene. They've now got another Portuguese coach, so yeah, it will be perhaps back to what it was before, but we'll see. But Nuno did a great job, and he may well fill one of the gaps that's available now in Premier League management at another club.
I mean, we can't have this conversation and not talk about Spurs, Daniel Levy, and the great one, Jose Mourinho. So I'm going to come at this question from two sides. First off, lately, I've been hearing people, you, beside being a commentator, what a lot of people don't know is that you also are a coach. So you understand the mindsets and the dynamics of coaching. And lately, I've been hearing people use a term that is strange to me as a football person. They'll say, Jose Mourinho has passed his prime. Football has left him. He's no longer as good as he used to be. What does those kind of terminology, how does it sound to you? I mean, you're a pure football person. How does that kind of thing sound to you, knowing Jose the way you know Jose?
The philosophy of a club is sometimes at odds with the style of a coach, you know? And I think Tottenham fans love free-flowing football. It's not... I'm not criticizing them for it, but it tends to make you more of a cup-winning team than a league-winning team if you play with freedom and panache, and you take risks, if you like, and some of those risks at this level are not going to pay off, and you end up losing games that you should win. I think what Jose was trying to bring was a pragmatic approach, get the game done. Not easy these days. When Mourinho started management, the laws were a bit different in the game. You could button down games. You could get to 2-0. We used to say about Jose Mourinho at Chelsea, 2-0 again. Well, 10 minutes gone, it'll finish 2-0. 60 minutes gone, it's 2-0. It'll finish 2-0. Whatever. But he got enough players who manage the situation on the field. Now, it's a debate, and you're an ex-player, so you know about these debates. What's the most important thing in the business? Now, a lot of people inside football will say we've got to win. That's the most important. We lose our jobs if we don't win. It's a results business.
Yeah.
But the way the game has been portrayed, and particularly in COVID, where, you know, people are looking for entertainment as well as results. It was probably the wrong time to be sitting in this country for the first time ever. Every game was live on television. I know in Africa that's been the case for a long time.
That's what we've had forever.
But here it has been quite restricted. Yeah, four games a weekend live, basically on television, 5 at the most. So every game, so every match was scrutinized by everybody, including the media, of course, including the fans. And I think that the games that maybe could be tucked away, maybe 5 minutes highlights on the national broadcast of the BBC here. They have a show, Match of the Day, has been going since the early 1960s, and very fine show it is too. But they only have a limited amount of time. So if your game wasn't a great game, the most people would see of it would be 5 minutes on the Saturday night highlights. Now everything was analysed, and I don't think that helped Jose. Of course, he hasn't lost his touch. Of course, he isn't out of date. He has a way of going about it, which will serve him well. And I think his new challenge in Italy will probably prove that. But in the end, what I thought it looked a great job for him. But because of the circumstances in the world, as much as the circumstances, I'm certainly not blaming the Spurs fans for their reaction to it. You know, they're entitled to. They pay their money. They're entitled to have their voice, and they weren't happy with it. I mean, a lot of people around my place of work, more than around here. I live near Chelsea's training ground, so most people around here talk about Chelsea. But there are a lot of Tottenham fans out there who just weren't happy with it. Now, listen, be careful what you wish for is always the argument.
Yeah.
I thought there was I'd just like to mention this. It's not the most relevant thing, but you know, I do believe that life can be cruel and life can be kind. And life was very cruel to Ryan Mason as a player whose career was finished with a fractured skull. And I commentated on the game, playing for Hull City at Chelsea, a former Tottenham player, former England player. And his career was cut short. Now he was given the chance for the last few matches of the season to be the interim manager in the Premier League of Tottenham Hotspur. And I just thought that was a lovely personal story, that his playing career had been taken away prematurely. His managerial career started very prematurely. And of course, you know, one doesn't balance out the other, but you can have it's a good lesson in life that in the dark times, there is some light. And for Ryan Mason, that the Jose Mourinho situation brought some light into his life, you know.
Okay, so let's. I mean, I still sit back and I ask myself the award for the PFA Player of the Year, Kevin De Bruyne. This is my thoughts. I thought that Kevin De Bruyne was influential, but not on a consistent basis. There were times where he drifted off completely, 5-6 games. It wasn't there. It was Ike Gundogan. Overall, would I vote for Kevin De Bruyne as Man City Player of the Season? I don't think I would. How he managed to get that Player of the Season when you have Harry Kane scoring 27 goals, winning the highest goal scorer, also providing more assists than any other player. What's your take? I know you don't like commenting on the individual player thing, but do you think that this award, this is the one that people will look back and say, no, maybe because his team won it, he doesn't deserve it?
My view, you've remembered my view, to your credit, because you talk to a lot of people. My view is that the individual awards have no part in the team game. At Woking, the club where I coach, we ended our season and we had various awards, and one player won them all pretty much, and it was so repetitive. But good for him, but he was nothing without the rest of the guys. So I don't really set any store by it at all. I don't have a vote. I'm not a member of the for the Footballer of the Year. I'm not a member of the Football Writers Association. I'm not quite sure why, but I'm not. There isn't a Broadcasters Award, and I would be saying, we shouldn't be. We should be giving team awards. I'd like to give Leeds United an award as a team because of what they brought to the Premier League this season. That to me is much more as a team game. So I'm not going to duck your question. I'm just going to tell you, don't ever ask me more questions about individual awards because you know what you're going to get. Okay. And I'm sure you got some Man of the Match awards and some Player of the Year awards.
Yeah,
and I'm sure you're very proud of them. But
yes, I am. But I think the awards that we got as a team still is the most important for me because
of course
it means that everybody's come together to do something very special.
Yes.
I mean, at the start of this show, I said we're going to talk about the Premier League, review the Premier and talk about Euro. I just looked at the time now and time is gone. But I wouldn't fail to ask this question. It's been on my head. I mean, I think I started that conversation and I said, give an Englishman the coaching job of your team and you will never win a title. That's like, I said that about 15 years ago. And, every time an English coach is given a club job, because I played in Sweden, and one of the greatest names in Swedish football is Roy Hodgson. That Roy Hodgson in Swedish football is like what you are to me in commentaries. He's a god. Not even Sven-Göran Eriksson is revered like Roy Hodgson in Sweden. Okay, but the last Englishman to win a title, the last Englishman was Wilkinson in 1992 for Leeds. 1990 for Leeds United. Since then,
before the Premier League,
before the Premier League. Premier League started in 92 up until this very minute. No English coach have won it. Every time they get the job, seems like they're comfortable with battling relegation. The English league is one of the best league in the world, most competitive league in the world, most marketed league in the world, most talked about league in the world, most mentioned league in the world. What is wrong with the English coaches? How come they cannot rise in their own domain to the very top? You go to Germany, Germans have won it. You go to Spain, Spanish coaches have won it. You go to Italy, France, everywhere. What is wrong with English coaches that they can't raise the bar to the point where an English coach will compete and win?
Well, I think mostly they don't get the opportunity. I'm just trying to think when you were asking that question. Frank Lampard finished fourth, didn't he, last in the season, and then lost his job 6 months later.
And I predicted that.
I think because the dressing rooms are full of it's a multicultural, multinational world, the Premier League. And sometimes we've just mentioned Nuno, who obviously is perfectly equipped to deal with the predominantly Portuguese players in the dressing room. So I think that doesn't help. And it's just gone on and on and on. And the English coaches tend to be pushed forward to be manager of the England team. And Gareth Southgate was a Premier League manager and had to battle at the bottom of the table. It's the ownership is foreign, so that I think makes it a global decision, and there is some sort of status for those who've come from outside, and it's like a player in the club. If you come through the ranks, you're not treated as well. You don't get as much money as the guy who's brought in with a big fanfare and a big signing on fee and big wages. So growing up through it, I guess you need the stage to shine on, and no one's getting the stage to shine on. I mean, Brendan Rodgers isn't English, but he is British, and therefore, he could have won the Premier League this season.
Yes, he could have. Yeah. Even with Liverpool, he could have won it.
And we shouldn't forget the great Sir Alex Ferguson, who won it plenty of times as a Scot. So I think from the British point of view, there's still plenty of opportunity. It's probably, as I say, the globalization of the league. You love it because you can identify with Wilfred and Ndidi and Kelechi. You can reach out for that. And as English players, we look at Jude Bellingham at Dortmund, and English broadcasters, we look at the English players elsewhere. and we want to know each week how Jude Bellingham's done, how Jadon Sancho's done, and we're going to see a fair bit of them, I think, in the next month here. We're not going to talk about the Euros, but it is really exciting, and we must tell everybody we had a little message conversation saying what we're going to talk about for an hour, and you said don't worry, and you were right.
Because there is a lot. So we're going to end it here because there's another show coming up, and this is what I'm going to say. First off, I feel very I got a watery eye again. I feel very honored that I could sit here for an hour and talk to the great Martin Tyler. You know how when we met in Brazil, you know the feeling, the emotions that we spewed out. Thank you very much. I don't take it for granted. I don't take it lightly. Thank you that every time I knock on your door, you're responding to me. You're giving me a chance to really relate with you. You love me because of this beautiful game. The Euro is coming, and I know you're going to be committed to it because of your work and all that. What is going to happen is when the Euro is over, I'm going to have your take on the Euro. And I know that time the season is just about to start. We're going to have your take on it and then prepare for the new season. But thank you very much. And tell the host of all the commentators in England, Alan Brazil, Alan Smith, Peter Drury, that Nigerians love them just the way they love you. You guys have made the game beautiful. Thank you very much for your time on the show, sir.
It's a real pleasure because we are brothers. We are kindred spirits, and I love talking. The hour, I can't believe the hour is gone. So I look forward to the next hour, and who will be champions of Europe? Who knows?
I don't know yet, but I'm tipping Belgium #1, France #2, and any other team. But I don't think England has got a team that can win the Euros. I'm sorry.
To be continued, as they say.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
We gotta go. God bless you. Yes, Anana being
TV radio, redefining broadcasting. Listen.